Radio host Mark Levin really does have a bone to pick with Tucker Carlson.
Angry boomer!
Yes, but also freshman Republican Congressman Randy Fine, who also attacked Tucker Carlson, has advocated for mass starvation and slaughter of literal children in Gaza. And
you said Randy Fine advocated for mass starvation?
Yes, Randy Fine.
Someone his size?
Well,
I feel like charity.
Oh my God, I love you.
Charity starts at home.
I love you so much.
This is what bothers me so much about it. He's using emotional blackmail. His comment about you have a little podcast, you do this and that. Let me tell you something, Mark Levin. Your employer, Fox News, considers it a strategic imperative to invest in podcasts and the YouTube audience. And because they know that your medium, along with your message, is dying.
He said the most dangerous man in the world sat down with a confused millennial, referring to Nick.
He thinks Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous man in the world.
So here's my question. What is this like conference room they all get summoned to and they're like, okay guys, how are we gonna spin this?
The late, great Charlie Kirk, he himself said, isn't it strange how people in Israel have more power to criticize the government in Israel than I myself do? I find that a little weird.
It just shows you that he's onto something, you know?
Yeah, he is. I mean, it's not just Tucker Carlson. They're picking him because he has one of the largest audiences.
This is close to becoming the longest shutdown in U.S. history. Millions of Americans are losing SNAP benefits.
I do think both sides are in this conflict for their own political purposes as opposed to carrying out what's necessary to take care of our people, the American people. Welcome to Her Take. We have a fantastic show ahead for you all today. We're going to get into a bunch of different topics, including the latest on the government shutdown. It is ongoing. What does that mean for SNAP benefits? Lindy is going to take us on a ride on that story. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Republican Jewish Coalition summit that took place recently, where canceling Tucker Carlson seemed to be the topic of discussion. We'll give you an update on the ongoing potential regime change war in Venezuela and the assassination investigation into who killed Charlie Kirk. There are some inconsistencies in regard to what we've been hearing from the FBI, and Amy is going to walk us through what the latest is. And if time, we might check in on the New York City mayoral race. But before we get to any of that, you need to meet our guest for today, who's absolutely lovely. Caroline Sunshine, a fitting name, is a political strategist and former Disney star who went from starring in Disney Channel's Shake It Up to serving in the Trump White House. She worked at the highest levels of the American government, first in the White House press office, later as senior advisor and communications director to Vivek Ramaswamy, and most recently as the deputy director of communications for President Trump's historic 2024 presidential campaign. She holds a BA in government from Claremont McKenna College. Welcome, Caroline.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So good to have you.
Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Well, I figured we can begin with the latest on the government shutdown. Lindy, take it away.
Anna, thank you. Well, this is close to becoming the longest shutdown in U.S. history, which is astounding because the previous record is 35 days. I think we are at 35 days as of today. Wow. So it's just amazing how intransigent, from my opinion, Democrats have been. Senate Democrats have voted 13 times to keep the government shut down, which means that millions of Americans are losing SNAP benefits. Airports are canceling flights where, federal workers are not coming in because they haven't been paid. You know, that people are living paycheck to paycheck and they depend on their salary to make things work, and people are no longer coming to work. Not only that, healthcare premiums are set to double 200 to 300%, which is unsustainable for 24 million Americans around the country. And this is not just a Democratic issue or Republican issue. This is a fundamentally American issue.
Yes.
In fact, the people who are most hit by the premium strikes, the premium spikes are Republican, because 21 out of the 24 states that are most impacted are red states. So this is something that we want to take action on. But I very much admire the fortitude that Senator Thune has displayed on this issue, because he is saying, we want to negotiate on healthcare premiums. We want to keep healthcare costs down, but we will not negotiate with a gun held to our heads. And so I'd love to play a clip of him. I've never seen him so fiery. Honestly, I thought he was just Before he became Senate Majority Leader, I thought he was just Mitch McConnell's backbencher. But in recent months, he's really displayed some backbone. So why don't we play that clip of, this is Senator Thune.
Let me just point out, if I might, that we are 29 days into a Democrat shutdown. And the senator from New Mexico was absolutely right. SNAP recipients shouldn't go without food. People should be getting paid in this country. And we've tried to do that 13 times. And you voted no 13 times. This isn't a political game. These are real people's lives that we're talking about. And you all have just figured out, 29 days in, that, oh, there might be some consequences. There are people who run out of money. Yeah, we're 29 days in.
All right.
And they've done their best to make sure that a lot of these programs are funded.
I want to open it up to you guys. I just want to say one last thing. This is causing tremendous suffering because there are going to be people who choose to just not have insurance, which ironically will send insurance premiums spiking even more for everybody. But I do completely sympathize with the fact that we cannot be lurching from crisis to crisis. We cannot be negotiating with our gun held to our heads. And Chuck Schumer is more invested in his own political survival than he is about the welfare of Americans at whole. I want to hear your take on this, but I really feel like we have unions abandoning the Democrats. We have federal workers abandoning the Democrats. Democrats have taken... Chuck has Schumered himself into a no-win situation. He needs to say, we're going to open the government, but we also have to fix this healthcare crisis. So what do you ladies think?
I partly agree with you, and the area where I agree with you the most is where I do think both sides are in this conflict for their own political purposes as opposed to carrying out what's necessary to take care of our people, the American people. I think in the case of what the Democrats are doing, there is pressure from the Democratic constituency for the Democratic Party to fight. And I think for the first time in a long time, the Democratic Party is fighting on the proper grounds because healthcare premium spiking is going to hurt a lot of people. And as you correctly pointed out, interestingly enough, the constituency that's going to be hurt the most from those spiking prices is going to be Republican voters. But Democrats are fighting to do something about the extension of the subsidies nonetheless. And I think that's the right thing to do. You know, this argument from Thune about how, oh, we're not going to negotiate with a gun to our heads, I don't even see it that way. I see this as, hey, you know what? This is an important issue that impacts Americans across the political spectrum. As members of Congress, it is your duty to look out for your constituency, to look out for the American people. So rather than seeing this as we don't want to give Democrats a win or this is all politics, what can we do to work together so we open the government back up, fund the government, and more importantly, ensure that Americans aren't going to deal with these insanely expensive premiums where they're no longer covered?
Yeah, and I just want to quickly follow up to you. You know, there's so many hacks in this industry, but
Totally.
You're not a hack. You are not a hack.
No,
you
I hope not.
care. No, let me tell you, I've seen a lot of them. You are not one. You care about the American people. I just want to say, though, I think you're giving Chuck Schumer a little bit too much credit, though, because he knows he's going to get primaried by AOC.
He's doing this for politics, for sure.
He absolutely is. And he had a precious little book tour in March, and he got shouted down by his own liberal base. So he's learned his lesson that he needs to fight. He's fighting not because of healthcare premiums mostly. Yes, that's a byproduct, but he's fighting for his political life.
Everyone has their own agenda.
You're right.
And even likewise with the Republicans as well, you know. I mean, it's now being stated several times that really they could concede to the Democrats to some extent, but apparently, so far as so many people are saying, a large part of the reason why they don't want to do that is because when they come back, there will be a forced vote on the Epstein files. This is something that Thomas Massie has been talking about. This is something that Marjorie Taylor Greene has spoken about, that the second the government is reopened, she will get on that floor and she will name names. So I think there's a high possibility that even if there was a perfectly conducive situation for the Republicans to say, okay, we found some middle ground here, let's get the government back open, let's get people, you know, their benefits and everything that they need, there may be some hesitation to do that for other agendas that they may possibly have as well, i.e. the Epstein list.
Okay, I gotta say, I didn't even think about that, but it makes so much sense because this is not politically advantageous for the
either, I
Republican
feel like.
Party either, right? Because if healthcare premiums spike, they're going to blame the Republicans for it, not the Democrats, because Democrats are on the record fighting to extend the subsidies.
So I'm going to bash Democrats here first, and then I'm going to bash Republicans.
Nice.
So the biggest lie sold about the Affordable Care Act was if you like your health care,
Yes,
you
amen.
can keep it.
Right.
Biggest lie sold in American politics. The household costs for middle-class families, the two biggest costs that are absolutely crushing the American middle class, are the cost of college and the cost of health care. And the Affordable Care Act has done nothing to meaningfully make those health care costs more affordable for that income bracket of families. Also, it created a system where the young and the healthy fund the entire healthcare system for the old and the sick. Because if you remember in the original Affordable Care Act, they have it locked in that it's a 3-to-1 ratio. The old and the sick can only be charged up to 3 times what a young and healthy patient can be charged. But the real cost is actually about 5 times of that. So you now have a system where young, healthy Americans are funding the entire system for the old and the sick. Also, these subsidies. These subsidies that the Democrats have shut down the American government over, which, let's be clear, that means military troops going without paychecks if it wasn't for the Trump administration stepping in, millions of Americans losing SNAP benefits. They were willing to shut down the government over these subsidies. Well, let's get into what these subsidies are. These subsidies did not exist before 2021.
That's right.
They were subsidies that were put in place when Biden was in office, when Democrats controlled Congress, and they were put in place during the COVID-19 pandemic. They were always designed to be temporary. They were written into law to only last 2 years. So you don't get to shut down the government over a law that you wrote when you had power and you only made it temporary. If you wanted those subsidies to last, you should have written the law to last more than 2 years when you had power. You don't have power now. So you can either win elections, but it's not Republicans' fault that when you had power, you wrote the subsidies to always be temporary. And you do not get to shut down the government over that. Also, we're not talking about the fact that, Democrats are holding the government hostage over also wanting to extend health care coverage to illegal immigrants. And it's a language game that they are playing to try and fool the American public.
Okay,
the
explain that to me, because I really want to learn, I want to understand what the right is referring to when they say this, because I've looked into it. And look, in California, for instance, there have been audits that show that federal money that is not supposed to go to undocumented people did end up going to undocumented people, but it's not supposed to. That's against the law, and that's why the audit was done. So what is going on in which, there's this argument that the Democratic Party is currently fighting to get undocumented people
The law
covered?
states that if someone shows up in the emergency room, you have to
No.
cover them.
Not
that
just
is
that.
the law.
No, it uses a very specific term. So I'm glad you asked about this, because I, as a Republican, was also, I feel like most people at this table, we are skeptics of politicians.
Yes.
And I think both sides are completely weaponizing this shutdown for their own political gain. And I think I hate that we even live in a country where Congress even has the ability to shut down the government. I don't even think that should be a possibility. I think that if you want to shut down the government, that means you're not eligible to run for re-election next time.
But more
Maybe
importantly,
you should not be paid.
It's not their paycheck.
This is a side point, but if the government is shut down, the federal government shouldn't have the right to tax us.
They're still at the very least. You know who's the only people who's getting paid right now? It's Congress. Why are they getting paid for doing?
So they have no incentive
If that
to
was
stop
taken away,
this.
how quickly do you guys think they would be able to magically find a solution?
Exactly. So true.
But this provision, so I was skeptical that Republicans were. It's interesting. The shutdown is allowing both sides to have their weakest issue exposed. Democrats are extremely weak on illegal immigration. I think it's why they lost the 2024 election, all 7 swing states. Republicans are extremely weak on the issue of health care. Have always been, have proven that they continue to be. There's no good signs going forward that they're going to get any better. And that should be a huge wake-up call to Republicans, because I think the 2028 election will be decided on the issue of health care.
Really?
But let's get into the provisions that the Democrats are fighting for. It's a very specific term that they use. They want to extend health care coverage again for people who are lawfully present in the country. Well, what does lawfully present mean? Lawfully present means parolees, refugees and anybody who has come here claiming asylum. Now that all sounds all fine and good and doesn't sound like illegal immigrants, except when you look into the fact that under the Biden administration, everybody who came across the southern border was a parolee, a refugee, and an asylum claim. They were just letting people in, showing up. You had military-age males showing up at the southern border saying, "Hi, I'm here to claim asylum." And they go, "Okay, well, where are your wife and kids?" "Oh, they're back in the country that isn't politically stable for me to be in, but they can stay there." "Okay, come on in. You got an asylum claim. Here's a court date. You're released into the interior, never to be seen again." So it's just a language game. It absolutely, Democrats are fighting to extend that health care coverage for illegal immigrants they're just not calling it that.
So you are right about
calling
that.
it lawful.
Yes, but it's
right
also,
about
there's something in addition to that. We have to talk about the emergency rooms. And this is a huge deal because it's gotten to the point where people understand how the system works. They know that if they show up, they have to be dealt with. So a lot of these people, it's not, by the way, it's not just legal aliens, and I'm 100% with you on this, 100%. As a legal immigrant myself, I take profound offense at the people who exploit the system. But we have people just showing up willy-nilly to the emergency room expecting care because they know they can't be turned away. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, no less, not known to be a left-wing organization, illegal aliens' health care, it costs us $150 billion on an annual basis. That is money that we don't have. And I want to kindly remind folks that we are at $38 trillion in debt. We can't afford this anymore.
So, but my question about that is, what do you do when someone literally has a medical emergency and ends up in the what's your solution to that? Because we do have, whether we like it or not, there are people here, they're undocumented, and some of them are going to experience medical emergencies. Do you want the emergency rooms to turn them away?
Well, healthcare is a triage system because right now our system is overtaxed. We spend 20% of our GDP on healthcare.
Yep.
We are a first-class world with third-class outcomes.
That's
and part of it
true.
is because our hospital system is strained. So in my opinion, we just have to triage and prioritize the people who are most in need, yes, but also American citizens. But I'm talking about the people who they don't have a gunshot wound. I'm talking about the people who just, they look fine, but they just want, annual checkup or something, and you use emergency room as healthcare because there are cases like that. I'm not talking about the people who are on their deathbed.
I think Americans are some of the most generous, kind, giving people out there, and that they actually don't have a problem allowing illegal immigrants to gain access to emergency services. Like you said, the scenario you're painting is like, what do you do when somebody shows up at the ER? And by the way, I don't know any physician on call who would turn away somebody on the basis of immigration status. And I don't think the American people are asking that. I think what the American people are asking for is, do we all know what the number one source of credit card debt for Americans is?
It's medical debt.
It's medical debt.
Yeah.
It's medical
College,
debt.
right?
So if you provide them some relief, the American people are asking for some relief for their healthcare costs.
I totally
and that's
agree.
where I bash Republicans.
Look, this is
Because
why
you
I
guys
think
suck.
this is why someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I used to just putting all my cards on the table, I used to loathe her, right? But I actually have grown to respect her because I realized, when she talks about wanting to take care of the American people, she's not just BSing all of us. And the fact that she's willing to call out her own party in the area of healthcare, the fact that they've been wanting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And
what's their plan?
And
they never have a plan.
But
they never have a plan.
I also agree with you in regard to the flaws of the Affordable Care Act. The fact that you need the federal government to subsidize the Affordable Care Act in order to make the premiums affordable means that it is inherently flawed. So I agree with you on that. But we haven't really seen any replacement ideas or any real solutions
for a decade.
From the opponents.
Republicans keep saying, let's just hand it to the private market. There's also another element of the Affordable Care Act that I really like to point out. It's the pre-existing conditions component, meaning that if you have pre-existing, it's a good idea in theory, but let me tell you what happens in practice. It means putting all the sick people and the healthy people who are in the same pool now. And what happens? What does an insurance company need to do to become profitable? They need to raise premiums across the board, regardless of whether you yourself are sick or not. So it becomes unsustainable in that way. That's why they needed the subsidies to begin with, because we had deeply sick people along with healthy people. I really think that's a huge weakness of the system, although there are some aspects that I like. For instance, if you're 26 years old, up until 26, you can stay on your parents' plan, which I think is a fantastic idea. But until we solve that fundamentally it's a fundamental math problem.
I think one of the biggest issues with our healthcare system is how I mean, you see stories about it where if you have health insurance, the providers, meaning the hospitals, the doctors, will essentially charge a certain amount to get authorized to the health insurance companies. And it's usually an insanely inflated amount, outrageously priced, because they know they're going to have to negotiate with the health insurance companies, and it'll whittle down somewhat, but not by much. Even what that final figure is, when you compare that to what the hospitals or the providers charge someone who doesn't have health insurance at all, I mean, it's night and day.
Absolutely.
And so the whole system from top to bottom is so flawed.
But these subsidies, it's funny, the subsidies, I don't agree with Democrats holding the government hostage over subsidies that were always designed to be temporary. Again, I'm like,
but by the way, I do want to say
know,
they pretended they were temporary, but they knew that that was the only way to get the legislation passed. But I think in the back of their minds, they're like, it's kind of like the Social Security situation. Once you give it to them, it's hard to take it back.
But in black letter law, it says 2 years time's up.
Saying,
so I'm like, you know,
I think all along.
Yeah, I think they thought they were going to win the election and they didn't. So like, don't take it for granted. My sense is you want to keep those subsidies, win elections. But the subsidies themselves, to your point about what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, the subsidies themselves actually, yes, benefit Republican voters, but moreover than that, they actually benefit the American middle class.
Yes.
The extension of these subsidies says there's no longer a 400% cap on being 400% above the federal poverty line to get these subsidies. Well, when you hear 400% above the poverty line, what number rang through your head? My number was a lot higher than what it actually is.
Yeah, same.
For a single individual, that means you're making about $65,000 a year. And for a family of 4, it means you're making $128,000 a year. That is the American middle class.
Yes.
And the fact that this subsidy said we're going to take that cap away so that if you're in those brackets, you can have access to somebody, that is helping the American middle class. Why are Republicans voting against that part?
Right.
That is
Caroline,
so stupid.
I completely agree with you, but ultimately it is helping the bottom line of the insurance industry, and that is unacceptable. We have a fee-for-service model, which is completely broken. Until we shatter that, we're going to be stuck in this quagmire, because it is frankly morally reprehensible that United Healthcare, that Independence Blue Cross, that all of these giants, they are making money hand over fist.
Well, and that should be
and
the
the
red
subsidies
flag.
are going into the pockets of these healthcare industries, their pockets.
It's such a corrupt system. And so, I think everyone's making really good points. I'm going to ask one final question, then I'd like to move on. And it's just kind of going back to the whole immigrant argument. Because, look, I'm going to put my cards on the table again. I feel that if you're here in this country and you're, let's say, seeking asylum, you're not working and you're not paying taxes, I think that it's a valid argument to make that you shouldn't get these benefits that the American people have worked hard, paid taxes into, and should receive services from if they need those services. But if you are here, you're not quite an American citizen, but you're here legally, you're awaiting your court date or whatever, and you've been given a worker's visa and you are paying federal taxes, do you think those individuals should be covered by some of our public services?
They have a visa?
I mean, they have the option.
That they have a worker's visa and they are paying taxes.
If they're legally
They have the
here,
option to apply.
if they have a visa.
I mean, it depends on your income circumstances. So anybody, I mean, Lindy, I'm sure that you were, when you went through the process, they tell you that you're able to qualify for benefits when you're approximately halfway through the process. It's even before you get the green card, before you get the permanent residency and everything like that.
Yeah.
They do give you that during the interim waiting period, so long as you meet certain income thresholds.
And
so
I'm in favor of that, because I think if you're playing by the rules, you're contributing to our society, and then you should qualify for some of these benefits.
Absolutely. And let me be clear, I am not in any way for people being turned away when they come to the emergency room either. I think we need a two-tone approach. One that is addressing the illegal immigration at its root issue.
I agree.
Getting out the people who don't need to be here, and then simultaneously finding better solutions and prioritizing American citizens when it comes to healthcare and things like this. But I don't think that the solution to speed up that process is going to be turning away illegal immigrants from the emergency room.
It's not, but I do think the law is very clear who is legal and who is not. And lawfully present does not meet the definition of legally here in this country. If you're here on a work visa, if you're here going through the legal immigration process, you're already document system, completely different. Right. But you also cannot go anywhere near the line of, I think, offering up free healthcare to illegal immigrants, because we have finally gotten our southern border under control.
Right.
0 border crossings as of the last 3 months. The second you give free healthcare to illegal immigrants, you are going to invite
That's a billboard
mass migration. That is a billboard asking everybody.
Not only that, it's just
to
it's
come
unfair to American taxpayers.
Yes.
It just is. So
I know we gotta
period,
move
full
on. I
stop.
have just a quick analogy, just to give viewers an easy way to understand this. If you are in a lifeboat, okay, you cannot get everyone around you in the boat because the boat will sink. You fill it to capacity, so much so the boat can keep on carrying on, but you can't possibly get everyone. And that is the argument against somehow accommodating the 12 million illegal aliens. No, my view is that we got to take care of the American people first, because resources are finite.
Yes, absolutely.
all right, ladies, let's move on to the Republican Jewish Coalition Summit that just took place this weekend, and boy, was it fiery to say the least. So I'll go ahead and present this story. So there were a ton of speeches expressing quite a bit of hatred toward Tucker Carlson at the Republican Jewish Coalition Leadership Summit. Now, Carlson's decision to have a conversation with and platform Nick Fuentes, along with his consistent calls to stop arming and funding Israel, essentially made him a target at this event. In fact, just take a look at this tweet or this post on X by Chris Menahan, which shows the kinds of signs that people were holding at this summit. It says Tucker is not MAGA. On the bottom right-hand side, you'll see Republican Congressman Randy Fine holding the sign. And we're about to show you a clip in a bit where he weighs in on Tucker Carlson and those who aren't adequately supportive of Israel. So let's get to the first speech that really caught my attention, which was radio host Mark Levin, who really does have a bone to pick with Tucker Carlson, partly because Tucker Carlson has not been quiet about how he feels about Mark Levin. So you're about to hear him refer to not just Tucker, but other conservatives as cowards because of their views on Israel. Take a look.
And I just want the anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-West crowd to understand something. You're going to have to come through me and millions of people just like me, and you're not going to make it. You think your stupid little podcast, or your stupid little subscription program, or your little TV show, or maybe you have a little radio show, is going to change the world like hell it is, not if I and everybody else have something to say about it.
Okay,
Angry boomer.
Yes, but also he's just a radio show host. So like when he says you're going to have to come through me, what does that even mean?
Oh,
I
no,
watched his show last night and I wanted to vomit, with all due respect. It was so aggravating.
He is not just a radio host. And let's not forget, Mark Levin was a vocal champion of, what is it? The Iraq War. And which nation did not offer American troops to go fight in that war? Israel.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Tucker Carlson is more MAGA, more America first, more patriotic than anyone on that stage.
Oh, 100%, completely. I just think it's ridiculous. We have so far gone past this point of cancel culture, I thought, at least when it comes to the right. Like, the right spent the majority of the Trump campaign mocking and laughing at the woke left.
Right.
And we're here doing exactly the same thing. And the worst part is we're actually calling Tucker and Candace and these other people the woke right. That's what people on the right in the Conservative Party are now labeling them as if to, you know, create this layer where people are like, okay, they're espousing all of these things to discredit the movement in general. That's what they're trying to make a point about Tucker, about Nick Fuentes, about Candace Owens. The way I see it is that Nick Fuentes is somebody who was relegated to the darkest corners of the internet. The fact that he has been able to amass the following that he has by going deep into the topics that he is passionate about, educating his audience each and every week. Yes, sometimes he says controversial and inappropriate things. He is an edgy commentator. However, he has more than earned his seat at the table to be able to have this much influence despite all of these forces actively working against him. And all Tucker is doing is recognizing that, as we all can. Everybody who has, you know, 2 eyes, 2 ears, we can recognize that it's okay to talk about Nick Fuentes now. And Tucker's simply offering him a seat at the table.
Well, what's interesting is that people like Mark Levin and those who are just avid supporters of Israel aren't really considering why someone like Nick Fuentes has really shot up in fame and notoriety. They think that it's because people like Tucker Carlson or Patrick Bet-David platform Nick Fuentes, but I don't think that's true at all. Nick Fuentes has a massive audience of his own. I mean, some of his live streams have hundreds of thousands of people watching live, 300,000, 400,000.
Yes.
Now, I'm saying this not because I agree with, Nick Fuentes or I'm on his side or anything like that, but I do think it's worth trying to understand where his popularity comes from. And so is it because he's, all these names that people like Mark Levin would, say Nick Fuentes falls under? Maybe, but no. I actually think it has more to do with the fact that people are paying attention to what's happening in places like Gaza, in the West Bank. Like, young people are not watching legacy media. They're on TikTok, they're on social media, they're watching independent news. And I'm sorry, what you said earlier is totally right. Americans are good people, they're generous people, and they don't like seeing human suffering, and they don't like to see human suffering with their resources being utilized in order to carry it out.
Anna, you're totally right, spot on. They're noticing what's happening in Gaza, but more importantly, or as importantly, they're noticing what's happening within the halls of power in the United States Congress itself. Right. And they're noticing who's buying our politicians, who has the power, who you're not allowed to criticize. And Charlie Kirk said something. The late, great Charlie Kirk, he himself said, isn't it strange how people in Israel have more power to criticize the government of Israel than I myself do? I find that a little weird.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot fault me for quoting Charlie Kirk himself, okay?
Netanyahu, when he did the Nelk Boys podcast, and he just keeps going, why are you regulated? Why are you regulated? Like, trying to act like you're like, we're not buying this for a second, like, right? Because why are you regulated? It's like,
it's
no.
so true. It's so true. Yeah, but you're right, Lindy. And so I think the efforts to ban or censor Nick Fuentes over his views have only empowered him and have only drawn more audience members to his content. And what I can't stand is the fact that people like Mark Levin refuse to ever take a look at how they've fed into this, how their calls for censorship has fed into this. And so I'm sorry, the idea that Tucker Carlson platformed Nick Fuentes didn't need Tucker Carlson to platform him. He already had a massive platform of his own, massive audience of his own. And so I want to go to the next video because more and more Christians in America have begun questioning the notion of so-called Judeo-Christian values. And you're about to hear Mark Levin basically pinning the blame for that squarely on Tucker Carlson. Let's take a quick look at that.
To Tucker Carlson, I say, did you have a head injury? What happened to you? But you know what? Unlike other people, truly, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't care why. I just know what you are. You platform these people. You deceive your audience. You lie to your audience. You become a full-blown, out-of-the-closet Jew hater. And if you're a Jew hater, you're a Christian hater. If you reject Judaism and Christianity, then you reject the American founding based on the Judeo-Christian values and belief system.
I do not believe that Tucker Carlson is a Jew hater by any means. He has been very critical of Israel, and someone who cares about the sanctity of life as a Christian, which Tucker Carlson purports to be in that camp, would be very uncomfortable seeing our resources being used to kill innocent people.
Yeah.
And so calling him a Jew hater is disgusting, but also saying that if you're a Jew hater, you're a Christian hater is also disgusting because he is a devout Christian.
It's so deeply offensive. And Anna, you and I were talking about it earlier. I've been wearing this necklace for 20 years, okay? I proudly wear a Christian cross everywhere I go. Faith is so deeply important to me, and I'm unashamed about it. Unabashed about it. I am a strong Christian. I always have been. It's deeply offensive to me for someone to say that I'm not Christian or that I somehow have a head injury because I dare to voice concerns about the 69,000 people who were murdered in Gaza. I think actually it's a testament to my faith that I do care. So Mark Levin, honestly, you know, get out of here. You have no right to criticize, or I don't need your approval to be Christian. Thank you very much.
Likewise. And I mean, same when it came to the comments, neutralize Tucker.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
By Josh Hammer that were made. Even just before that, he basically assigned people who weren't fully on board with this notion of Judeo-Christian values as pagans. He essentially called us. So anybody who does not focus all of their values on the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, and instead wants to draw their wisdom and life principles from both, as Christians do. You know, the death and resurrection of Jesus is pretty important to us Christians. Go figure, right? So the people who want to draw their life wisdom from both of those are apparently pagans, according to him. And this is just before he called to actually neutralize Tucker Carlson. Shortly after that, when everybody, you know, called out that he was obviously inciting political violence euphemistically, but still, he then went on to post that definition. Did you guys see that? He posted the definition of
He cut out number 3, though.
And he cut out the third one, which actually said that in a military context, yes, neutralize does mean to take somebody out. It's just ridiculous to see from, you know, all over the spectrum, all these people who are waging these attacks at Tucker Carlson, but it just shows you that he's onto something, you know?
Yeah, he is. I mean, it's not just Tucker Carlson. They're picking him because he has one of the largest audiences, but what Mark Levin is doing there, and this is what bothers me so much about it, he's using emotional blackmail. He is emotionally blackmailing Christians the same way that the BLM movement emotionally blackmailed white liberals into feeling guilty for the sins of this country. And it's because he can't win the argument on the merits.
Absolutely.
And when I see him up on that stage, I see this. I almost felt bad when I watched it, the clip. I almost felt bad for Mark Levin. So I thought, what an angry person.
Did you notice the audience wasn't very receptive?
First
to
of all,
what
like
he was
10
saying?
people.
So
They're like, how many
angry.
people are there? The audience.
It was angry
Seems like a
boomer
couple hundred.
stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was almost like the last dying gasp of this neocon movement that cannot understand for the life of it why it is losing. It is so blinded by their obsession to do regime change wars around the world that nobody wants, to blindly put any foreign nation, not just Israel, ahead of that of the United States. And his comment about, you have a little podcast, you do this and that, it's just funny because Fox is his employer. Let me tell you something, Mark Levin. Your employer, Fox News, considers it a strategic imperative for their company to invest in podcasts and the YouTube audience. And because they know that your medium, along with your message, is dying. And you know that too on some level.
Exactly. And
That's evident by how they're buying all of these media outlets, buying TikTok.
Sorry, not sorry, but Josh Hammer, Mark Levin, Randy Fine, all of them, you are not the gatekeeper of Christianity. You don't get to tell me what I can believe and what I can say. I've been threatened. I've been threatened, and I've shown you the screenshots. I've been threatened and castigated for daring to raise questions about our abetting and funding of atrocities in Gaza. It is my duty and responsibility and privilege as an American to ask questions. Why are my tax dollars subsidizing this when we have millions of Americans in need of our help on the streets? Why is our billions of dollars going overseas?
Instead of to fixing healthcare.
Absolutely. You cannot tell me that we can't afford to give Americans healthcare when you're over there funding bombs.
Can I just also say something? I think you ladies have done a great job in defending Christianity and your beliefs. I want to actually defend just Jewish people in general, because what I really get disgusted by is how intentionally you have people like Mark Levin equating or conflating either Zionism or the war crimes of Israel with being Jewish. And that is not true. It's just not. It's so manipulative and disgusting, because there are many Jews all across the globe, including here in our own country, who are openly critical of what Israel is doing. And to conflate them to basically make it seem as though someone like Tucker Carlson is commenting on Jewish people as opposed to a nation state, as opposed to a foreign government, is just a really sick and twisted way to manipulate the
They're
narrative.
Really good at that
dishonest.
fancy word game, and they do the exact same thing when they equate anybody who is a Palestinian in with Hamas.
Yes.
Their verbiage around, oh, it's Israel versus Hamas. Never Israel versus Palestine. Yes, Hamas is the government of Gaza, but even when it comes to the West Bank, there's a partially, like, somewhat civil government that is located there that is
Palestinian
independent of
Authority
Hamas.
governs.
And yet they always conflate the two.
Exactly.
And when you make a valid point about why you don't want to see these atrocities occur, they say, oh, you're a terrorist sympathizer.
Right.
Oh, you can't negotiate with terrorists. Okay, we can't even have this conversation with you.
Right.
And they're able to immediately just discredit you and diminish your point with this fancy word game that they've been playing as soon as this war started.
That's
Absolutely.
very true.
Amy, amen. We had a guest on during our previous episode. She had the gall to say that I was voicing Qatar talking points.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even think about Qatar. I've never had any contact with anyone from Qatar or anyone in the government or anyone from the Middle East, for that matter. How dare she? Because I decided to advocate for the United States of America?
Right.
No, thank you.
And by the way, I hope you asked her when she was on this show what she thought of Israel, who's supposedly our ally, unilaterally bombing Qatar, which houses the largest U.S. military base
I'm sure
in
she loved
the
it.
region.
I'm sure she loved it. She's
and
literally paid to defend Israel no matter what it does.
It's insane.
But let's move on to the next clip because I really want to move on to freshman Republican Congressman Randy Fine, who also attacked Tucker Carlson. And this man is just grotesque in every way, has advocated for mass starvation and slaughter of literal children in Gaza and is like unabashed about it. So here he is essentially weighing in on Tucker Carlson specifically.
But make no mistake, today, Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. He has chosen to take on the mantle of leader of a modern-day Hitler Youth, to broadcast and feature those who celebrate the Nazis, those who call for the extermination of Israel, to defend Hamas, to even criticize President Trump for stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions. Friends, make no mistake, Tucker is not MAGA.
It's so corny.
It's
what's
so
interesting
lame.
is Josh Hammer started his article the same way, though. He said the most dangerous man in the world sat down with a confused millennial, referring to Nick.
He thinks Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous man in the world.
So here's my
Okay.
question. What is this, like, conference room, this, like, emergency conference room they all get summoned to, and they're like, okay, guys, how are we going to spin this? What's the verbiage that we're going to go with this time? And they're
I'm
like,
sure they do
most
that.
dangerous man in America? Everyone say aye? Okay, we're running with that. That seems to be the case, right?
He's dangerous, quote unquote, because he dares to tell the truth. And by the way, my evolution on Gaza has nothing to do with Tucker Carlson. It's because I have eyes that see and ears that hear. I can make decisions for ourselves. And for people like Mark Levin and what's his name, Randy Fine, to say that, oh, Tucker Carlson is basically a puppet master, that's actually an insult to our intelligence as well. Because anyone who has the eyeballs to see 69,000, and a lot of them women and children, needlessly being murdered, they should feel a deep sense of revulsion. If they don't, I would inquire as to what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
You said Randy Fine advocated for mass starvation?
Yes, Randy Fine.
Someone his size?
Well,
I feel like charity.
Oh my God, I love you.
Charity starts at home.
I love you so much.
That's hilarious.
And I don't want to make any assumptions because I genuinely don't know this. Is Randy Fine Jewish? I genuinely don't know. I'm
Yeah,
asking genuinely.
he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I saw the yarmulke and it's just hard to tell sometimes if people are being performative
Ironic,
or if it's
well, there is
if it's
the
authentic.
performative, like, you know, visiting Israel, doing the wall thing, and
Yeah.
being a Christian. Like, it's always really interesting to me. But yeah, Randy Fine he's actually not shy about talking about how Israel's a priority for him, even as a United States member of Congress. And Lindsey Graham, by the way, kind of falls in that category as well. So
I had such high
Don't get
hopes
me
for him.
started on
I honestly had such high hopes, but Lindsey, man.
No,
he's
no,
really let
no.
us down.
You don't have hopes.
single greatest thing you could do for U.S. foreign policy is to make sure that Lindsey Graham is banned from golfing with President Trump. That he is sanctioned
That's
from
actually
golfing
really
with President
spot
Trump.
on, yeah.
President Trump has great foreign policy instincts. Lindsey Graham comes in and it's a completely different story.
Well, he's been
People
golfing with Lindsey Graham a lot, and you're about to understand why Caroline's making the point that she's making after you watch this clip of Lindsey Graham. Here he is at the same conference, making some threats, I think. Let's take a look.
But I just want to make it really clear, I'm in the Hitler sucks wing of the Republican Party. What is this Hitler shit? I don't know. Anyway, here's what I do know. You can sit in a basement with weird people and say weird things. It's a free country, right? But if you ever run for office as a Republican and you embrace this weird shit, we're gonna beat your brains out.
So that was a veiled threat at Tucker Carlson.
It gets worse, though. He says we're killing all the right people.
At one point during his speech, he says we're killing all the right people.
And again, it's the word conflation, conflating anybody who is critical of not just Israel, but foreign money in government. Anyone who's critical, Nazi, that's their fancy word game that they play.
Yeah.
And for anybody who's uneducated, how could they deny it when they're hearing on one side you have terrorist sympathizers and Nazis, and on the other side you have these American first patriots?
By the way,
it's not until you dig a little bit deeper beneath the surface how quickly apparent it becomes this word game that they are playing.
In fact, it's funny because Senator Graham seems to be out to lunch when it comes to the reality of young Republicans, because young Republicans have really divided themselves from older, I guess, boomer Republicans on the issue of foreign policy and on Israel in particular. And Caroline, we were talking about that a little bit, backstage. Can you weigh in on that a little bit? Because you have more experience with conservatives than I do.
Oh, yeah. I mean it. The best thing you could do for U.S. foreign policy is make sure Lindsey Graham cannot golf with President Trump, because President Trump has excellent foreign policy instincts. It's part of why he was elected. All the way back in 2015, 2016, he was the first Republican to say, I don't think we need to be involved in these endless foreign wars. Well, who bears the brunt of endless foreign wars? Who is it that goes and fights in the Middle East?
Our soldiers.
Who is it? And who are those soldiers? Are they Lindsey Graham's age?
Nope.
How old are they? They are 18. In the most recent bombing of Iran with the B-2 bombers, the base in Qatar, Al Udeid, was being manned by 4 guns operated by U.S. Marines ages 18 to 23.
Yep.
Wow.
That is who your front line is.
Yes.
That is who is sent to die in foreign regime change wars, whether it's Venezuela or the Middle East. And Lindsey Graham, he loves to get up there and act like he's a tough guy. He loves to use that tough rhetoric. We're going to knock out Tucker's lights. We're going to go bomb this. It's like he loves to feel tough. He's not tough. The people who are tough are the people who go bleed and die in our foreign wars, and America has paid way too high of a cost for that. And that is why you are seeing young Republicans wake up and say, we love our country. We don't want to go expend the best of us, the best of our young, healthy adults.
And it's not just the cost in blood and treasure of which we paid too much. It's also the $1 trillion of interest that we pay every single year on our debt. And a lot of that is because of our bungled mess in the Middle East.
Yeah, I agree.
How many regime change wars do we wage there? And what are the fruits of our labor?
Right, is it better off? It's not.
There.
No, okay, I got to weigh in on something because I don't know how people aren't beside themselves with rage over this. 9/11 fundamentally changed the course of this country, and not for the best, okay? 9/11 is what robbed younger generations of a bright future in this country because of the debt that we're in and because of the regime change wars that we fought in the Middle East in response to 9/11, okay? Who did 9/11 again? Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda terrorists carried out 9/11. We are now supporting an Al-Qaeda terrorist who is the leader of Syria following the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. He stepped foot on U.S. soil just a few weeks ago to attend the UN General Assembly. How are we okay with this? Now we're talking about the Trump administration working with him in order to formalize certain business deals with other Middle Eastern countries, including Israel. What are we doing? How is this okay?
Yeah.
How is this okay? I'm not okay with doing, all of these friendly deals with an al-Qaeda terrorist.
Unfortunately, there was a precedent. And again, I really tried to give the Trump administration a ton of credit. Honestly, Caroline, I have. I cannot get on board with releasing 5,000 Taliban prisoners the way that we did a couple of years ago.
Right.
That's just not a good idea in my mind. That was under Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State. The Taliban is our enemy. We should not be releasing them into the wild so they can commit atrocities again. So, and we should have nothing to do with people, the architects of 9/11.
I totally agree.
Not.
By the way, and I mean, so let me get this straight. We're currently living in this insane reality where innocent people in Gaza, including literal children, are treated as terrorists. But when it comes to an actual terrorist who was part of the terrorist group that committed 9/11, we're inviting him to U.S. soil, okay, to visit the United States.
Well, we invite Bibi Netanyahu, too.
Well, I obviously have huge issues with that. I have huge issues with that as well. But honestly, I mean, no one can deny the al-Qaeda 9/11 connection, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. The only thing I'll say about what's going on in Syria was that's who their people chose. And the one thing was, I am so tired of the United States going into Middle Eastern countries, now potentially maybe Venezuela, and saying, we're going to select your leader for you.
Exactly.
We are in no position to tell anybody who to put in power. Our government is currently shut down. And our leaders are willing to let military troops go without pay. They are falling down on the job because they are so old and breaking hips. We are in no position to lecture any country on who they should elect and put in power. I think that's unfortunate that that is who the Syrian people chose. He's not somebody that I agree with.
I don't know how true that is, though, because, look, the Obama administration indirectly armed al-Qaeda. So they wanted to arm the rebels when the uprising happened. And let me just say, the uprising in Syria began as organic. But then you have all these proxies come in and try to exploit it for their own purposes. Russia was involved, Turkey was involved, Israel was involved, the United States was involved.
The Middle East,
So the U.S. wanted, on behalf of Israel, to be honest, wanted the fall of Bashar al-Assad because Bashar al-Assad was allies with Iran. Okay? So basically, we start funneling weapons to the rebels. Those weapons end up in the hands of al-Qaeda. Now, an al-Qaeda terrorist is the leader of Syria. And by the way, the persecution of Bedouins, the persecution of Christians. You know, the thing about Syria, even though Bashar al-Assad was a dictator and did horrible things, I'm not erasing that, he was also secular in that he allowed the various diverse religions within Syria to be able to practice their religion, right? Now with the new al-Qaeda terrorist leader of Syria, you have the persecution of all sorts of religious and ethnic groups that don't fall in line with this extremist, you know, jihadist vision.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that he was allowed on U.S. soil. You know who Trump tried to kick out, though? The president of Colombia.
Who's a longstanding ally, by the way.
And because he dared to criticize President Trump.
It's
Do we have that clip? Do we have?
We don't have that clip.
It definitely happened.
But you know what? We should move on to Venezuela because Colombia and Venezuela are kind of connected when it comes to these rising tensions with the United States. So I'll go ahead and move on to that story. So the Trump administration continues to strike so-called Venezuelan drug boats without providing any evidence that their targets are actually trafficking drugs. And look, it is important to remember that the U.S. strikes on these Venezuelan fishing boats really have nothing to do with fighting a drug war, especially when you consider the fact that fentanyl, which is the drug killing Americans on our streets as we speak, is not coming from Venezuela. The materials are coming from China. It's being processed in Mexico and then smuggled into the country. Now, according to DropSite News, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, his drive toward war has been predicated on claims that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is involved in the drug trade, including trafficking fentanyl to the U.S. But American intelligence officials have briefed President Donald Trump to the contrary, alerting him to the fact that little to no fentanyl flows from Venezuela to the United States. But the U.S. has killed 57 people through these boat strikes in the Caribbean, and some of them have been Colombian. So now there are rising tensions between the United States and Venezuela and the United States and Colombia. Colombia has been a longstanding ally of the U.S., so this is not good news. Now, U.S. officials have also, by the way, made clear that the real goal of this campaign is regime change in Venezuela, something that Marco Rubio has been wanting for many years. According to antiwar.com, a U.S. carrier or U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, is also being deployed to the Caribbean, and the U.S. has begun to run weekly bomber flights near the coast of Venezuela. Much of the military action and the leaks to the media are part of a psychological campaign aimed at getting Maduro to voluntarily step down or someone in his inner circle to turn on him. But that's unlikely to happen. So if that's unlikely to happen, what comes next? And there have been threats from the Trump administration that they're going to start doing strikes on Venezuelan land. Okay, and that obviously escalates the situation quite a bit. The Miami Herald reported on Friday that the U.S. has made a decision to attack military targets inside Venezuela as part of a campaign against the government of Maduro, whom the U.S. seeks to oust. The report said that the U.S. strikes could begin within a matter of hours or days. However, the Trump administration is sending mixed signals. Trump denies it. He's like, this is fake news. Marco Rubio is denying it. And so the real question is the report, the sources who spoke to the Miami Herald, are they part of the PSYOP where they're trying to essentially terrify Maduro and basically convince him to step down? Otherwise, there are going to be strikes on, Venezuelan soil. Hegseth also denied to comment on whether the U.S. was planning to bomb Venezuela a day after the Miami Herald's report, although previously he was basically saying, yeah, we're totally going to do this. And here's what's really funny. So the U.S. is looking to install a woman by the name of Maria Corina Machado,
who just got that Nobel Peace Prize, baby.
Yes. Wants to give it to President Trump.
What crazy timing with all of this, right?
So this story is crazy because she's making these insane claims. So she now claims that Hamas is located in Venezuela, which is obviously a lie. Here she is on Bloomberg talking about it.
Do you support U.S. military strikes on the territory of Venezuela as part of what you call a process?
I believe that the increase in pressure and the escalation that's taking place is the only way to force Maduro to understand that it's time to go.
Now, obviously, she's biased. She wants that position of power. The U.S. wants to install her in that position of power, again, in a foreign government. And I love this post by Dropsite News. They show a photo of Hamas leaders in Turkey, and they write in Istanbul, not Caracas.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
You know what America First is, guys? It's America First. It means no more forever wars, no more foreign entanglements. It means listening to George Washington's admonition during his farewell address saying, do not get entangled in foreign nations. We should not be doing more regime change wars in South America, in the Middle East, anywhere. We should be focusing on the American people. It just blows my mind how a lot of the neoconservatives are the least America First and the least MAGA people around.
I agree.
Right,
I
and
totally
a
agree.
little bit of like political and philosophical consistency from the Republican Party would go a long way as well, because they can talk all day, about how, this is a massive issue for the American people. We need to take out these drug cartels. We need to do all of this, and that may be solving one problem. But what about the whack-a-mole issue where another issue will rear its ugly head in the capacity of, if you destabilize a nation, where are people going to go? They're going to come here.
Yes.
Exactly like what happened with Trump's first term when he and Mark Rubio executed, I think it was Mark Rubio, a maximum pressure campaign against Maduro.
Yes.
And what ended up happening? Their economy became totally crippled. People started starving. Thousands of people died. And how many people ended up in these United States of America? And then Trump even granted a large majority of them a temporary protective order on his last day in office as well.
Yes.
So it's like, can we at least be politically and philosophically consistent on the Republican side?
Yeah.
That if we, we want to solve these issues when it comes to our border and the drug crisis and all of these things, well, let's ensure that while we're doing that, we're not creating a whole other host of issues that are also as equally, if not more detrimental to the American people.
And Caroline, to your point about how Trump hanging out with Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, who's a total war hawk. There isn't a war he didn't
was
love.
on the news also saying, oh yeah, it's because Venezuela's working with Hezbollah. They're funding Hezbollah. Now you're like, no, they're not.
It's so ridiculous. It really is. No, but he used to get foreign policy advice from Colonel Douglas Macgregor. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Okay,
He should get more advice from him.
Yes, it's very clear to me that he's not getting, any advice from Macgregor anymore, just based on what he's doing with Venezuela. But I do want to go to this video because Macgregor was recently interviewed on Tucker Carlson's show, and he's a really smart man. He obviously understands war, and he understands the complexities of going to war with Venezuela, especially when it comes to guerrilla groups, cartels. Basically, the unexpected that really Trump should consider as he's angling to potentially do a real hot war with Venezuela. Let's go to the next video. Again, this is Colonel Douglas Macgregor explaining that there are some paramilitaries that the Trump administration should be considerate of.
Remember, Venezuela has 1,700 miles of coastline, 1,370-mile border with Colombia, 1,380-mile border with Brazil. And I'm being told by people with experience down there that you've got 100,000 paramilitaries along their border in Brazil and Colombia that are just can't wait to go into Venezuela and fight us if we go into that country. And this sort of thing will spread. It's the last thing that we need. What we need is stability and peace. I would urge the president to reconsider his rejection of this proposal from Maduro.
So what he's referring to at the very tail end of that clip is Maduro was like, I'll give you everything. I don't want to go to war. What do you need? What do you need? Okay, I can concede. But Trump rejected it because Trump just wants him out.
It's as though the people running our foreign policy has never cracked open a textbook or understood anything that happened in the past, 80 years, including the Bay of Pigs during the Kennedy administration. Every time we go into South America, Central America, it's for lack of a better word, it's a clusterfuck. We don't know how to do things there. We need to respect other people's national sovereignty and focus on our own domestic issues because God knows we have so many issues to sort out here. And frankly, if you actually care about illegal immigration, this is the last thing you want. You don't want more instability. To Amy's point, we don't want people storming the borders because their country is in chaos.
And this isn't what the American people voted for. And I almost wish that we could rename Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco, Caracas, Yemen, Syria, Libya, because maybe then the neocon politicians in our country would care more about those places and helping those Americans and changing those regimes than trying to go find one off in some foreign land. There's also a high degree of irony with trying to take out Maduro. It's interesting. We're wasting all this time trying to take out a socialist in Venezuela. Meanwhile, a avowed democratic socialist is about to get elected in New York City, and I promise you he will do far more damage to New York City and to the United States of America with his socialist economic policies, although I think some of that is a little overblown. I actually think it's a separate topic. Than Maduro is ever going to do. And it's also ironic because Maduro is, don't get me wrong, he runs a socialist economic regime. But he's also very socially conservative. And he probably agrees with Lindsey Graham on things like, in Venezuela, you cannot get an abortion. Abortion is completely illegal. Sex changes for any adult, completely illegal. He's actually very socially conservative. But all of that is beside the point, which is that I do believe President Trump has good foreign policy instincts. I believe him to be somebody who does sincerely hate war. I believe him to be someone who sincerely does not like to expend American lives where they shouldn't be. But I think he is getting really bad advice and that bad actors have been empowered in this administration.
Do you think that maybe he is being influenced with money? Maybe corruption plays a role?
Absolutely. It's always the same bogeyman, by the way. It's a military-industrial complex. You brought up a really good point about naming our cities foreign countries.
Yeah.
The reason why neoconservatives care so much, it's the money, guys. It's always the money. Follow the money trail. Right now, Afghanistan is pretty much over. Iraq is pretty much over. So our defense contractors, the Lockheed Martins of the world, they need a new boondoggle.
Yeah.
So Central America, South America, that's it. That's our new target.
Yeah. I think the president also likes the optics of this, and I think the optics are incorrect. I think the optics of seeing these boats being blown up make for great political theater. They're a great ad where you can run it and say, look, we are taking the fight to those drug runners and to the people bringing drugs, but it's not. I mean,
it's not really about the drugs.
It's not.
Yeah, and
the
it's the thing that bothers me about it, guys, is like the overdose epidemic is real, and we talk a lot about like emotional manipulation.
Yes.
A lot of Americans across the country, especially in rural parts of the country, in big cities as well, people are struggling, people are suffering, they're losing their loved ones as a result of this horrible, hideous overdose epidemic.
Well, Tucker said it, right?
So
more
Tucker's
Americans have died as a result of drug overdose than have died in all of our wars combined.
So using that, exploiting that, not actually doing what's necessary to fix it, right?
Yes.
And instead exploiting it to manufacture consent for a war with Venezuela, I think is kind of sick.
Oh, it's not America first at all. It's manipulative.
And remember what happened just a couple days ago? The father of one of the people who were killed in these boats said, "My son isn't a high-ranking drug dealer. He's high-ranking."
Well, anyone
dumb."
would say that. I would hope my mom would
hold
say
on.
that about me.
He said he's not.
She's not.
He said he's not a high-ranking drug dealer. He's just high-ranking dumb.
Like somebody
My
got
son
he's
was
that
dumb.
too.
He was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
You know, my son. These people. I'm sure some of the people that President Trump targeted were drug smugglers. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. And frankly, I'm a little bit more hawkish in that I don't want to extend. I don't think that drug smugglers, these drug traffickers, deserve much of our leeway. But these people aren't drug smugglers. They're just fishermen. They're
I'm not totally convinced that they're. I mean, I am really happy that Tulsi Gabbard is at DNI, and I'm going to trust somewhat of our intel. I'm going to still place a level of trust in our military and in our intelligence that if you're saying this is the boat to strike, I'm not going to discredit that entire
I think the American people
apparatus.
should see some evidence, though.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And by the way, talk about wrong place, wrong time. If you're looking for right place, right time to take on the cartels, go to Mendocino County and Humboldt County in Northern California. The cartels, nobody wants to hear this.
Yeah. I want to hear it because it's true.
The cartels run both of those counties. Those are two counties within the interior of the United States in Northern California. The cartels run them. If you want to talk about tackling drug trafficking, that is where you go. You don't go off the coast of Venezuela. You go right here at home.
We do have cartels operating within the United States, and I think that's where the focus should be in terms of doing something about the trafficking of drugs within our borders. And by the way, I'm going to actually call out specifically the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. There are 11 of them. Back in February, they were debating whether or not to work with the federal government to deport illegals who are here trafficking fentanyl. Only 2 of them were in favor of deporting people who are here illegally trafficking drugs that are killing our people.
But that raises questions to me of like, part of the reason why Mexico is a failed narco-terrorist state is because the political administration in Mexico for decades is more responsive to the needs of the cartel than it is to their own people. They are bought off
cover. They've provided
at the
cover
local, state level.
There's a lot of corruption.
And you don't want that in the United States.
No, you don't. So you have to nip it in the bud right away before it gets out of control.
That means not abetting or executing regime changes down in South America. And by the way, it's not just the West Coast. I live in Philadelphia. Kensington is not far from.
Kensington is such a tragedy.
It's basically an open air drug market there.
Yeah.
But bombing random boats in South America looks more glamorous than doing the hard work of providing care on an individual basis to these people who are deeply suffering.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything to help them.
So I want to dedicate the rest of the show to this incredible segment that Amy produced on the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation, which I don't know what to think about it. It just feels super shady.
Of course, yeah. I mean, there's been so many more things since we last discussed this topic. This is fun because obviously the last time we had this conversation, somebody walked off the panel. I want to let you all know my goal is to induce that same reaction today. Just kidding. No. Come back, Caroline. Come back. So it's interesting because when we spoke about this last time, the very last point before everything kind of derailed was we were talking about this potential for foreign intelligence to be involved, specifically some people making allegations against the Mossad, right? Or other foreign governments. And, what's interesting is I was very clear in, asserting that I do not believe at this point that Israel or the Mossad were involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, because at that time there was no such evidence that revealed that that was the case. But what's interesting is it turns out that that was very much by design, because we actually have Joe Kent, who is one of Tulsi Gabbard's closest advisors, who was trying to investigate any links into foreign intelligence. And it turns out maybe there were some interesting things popping up. And Kash Patel was extremely mad about this.
Didn't want it investigated.
Did not want it investigated whatsoever. So much so that they actually ended up holding a White House meeting. Connor, I believe I have an article there, if you can pull that up here, and I can just read off my notes here. A roundtable meeting between Patel, Kent, Gabbard, Vice President J.D. Vance, and the White House Chief of Staff and senior DOJ officials was held at the White House. Kent told administration officials that he was granted access to FBI files by a low-ranking agency official. The Trump administration officials were worried that Kent's probe into foreign interference could provide ammunition to Robinson's defense lawyers, who could then argue there was more than one suspect involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So they're afraid of watering down the prosecution's case against Tyler Robinson, and for that reason, they are apparently unwilling to further investigate any leads that correlate to potentially foreign intelligence ties. Since then, guys, there have also been a host of other very unusual things that have happened. We're going to just speed run through all of these. I think it's really important to note that just a couple of weeks leading up to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we do have, I'm so sorry, I'm probably going to butcher her name, maybe one of you know. She was the FBI Salt Lake City field officer, Meteb Sayed.
Perfect.
I believe. Yeah. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, but she actually was known to be an absolute superstar in her field, to really leave absolutely no stone unturned. And just a couple of weeks before the assassination of Charlie Kirk, she was also fired by Kash Patel. So we have Kash Patel fire this individual who had so many accolades. It doesn't seem like there was any reason that I've researched of why she should have been fired. And we also have him preventing further investigation into foreign agents being involved.
Yes, so this is crazy. So basically there was a private jet that kept traveling from Cairo, Egypt, and it was basically like stalking every Turning Point, like religious event that was
Turning Point Faith, yes.
Turning Point Faith, thank you for correcting me. I think that's strange that basically they wanted to investigate that to see if maybe there might be a foreign link, and Kash Patel shot that down.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that they're using the same approach to Tucker Carlson that they're doing to people like Candace Owens, who was one of the first prominent voices, really loud voices, to say, let's look into the flight data of this plane that flew out of Utah just moments before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. If you have nothing to hide, why are you not allowing people to explore every potential avenue? Don't you want to get to the bottom of it?
Correct.
Doesn't Charlie deserve better?
That was the N88KG airplane.
Yes.
And now, so what's extremely interesting about all of this, and why there's been even further speculation, is because there are a bunch of terms, such as that plane, the N88KG, but also a number of other terms that were correlated to the assassination. So, for example, the name of the alleged assassin, Tyler James Robinson, the Lucy Center, which is a location in which Charlie Kirk was assassinated, the Mauser 98, which is the alleged weapon that was utilized to pull this off, the hospital where Charlie was treated, the doctors who all worked on Charlie. There was evidence of Google searches being made on Google Trends days before the assassination of Charlie Kirk for these specific terms. Days prior, weeks prior, absolutely flatline. Nobody's looking these things up. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days beforehand, we see these spikes. And then naturally, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we see these spike up even further. What's interesting, Anna, is these pings came out of two main hotspots. One of them was Washington, D.C., and the other was Israel.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Do you have the video that I sent you, Connor?
Question. When was the first time you heard the name Tyler Robinson or the Lucy Center? a Mauser 98. For me, and I assume many of you, it was in the days and weeks after Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination on September 10th. And you better believe I've been doing some Googling since then, right? Who is Tyler? What are the access points to the Losi Center rooftop? What kind of damage can a .30-06 caliber bullet do? But what if I told you somebody, maybe multiple somebodies, were searching those terms before September 10th? What do you think about that?
Before the shooting. Well, there's Washington, D.C. At 11 a.m., the day before the Charlie Kirk shooting. And you'll see here where the news finally broke that it was, in fact, Tyler James Robinson. But notice that. That's weird. That's weird.
That is weird, I gotta say.
So there was a couple of other really unusual ones as well. So Tony Graff, the judge selected to preside over the Charlie Kirk assassination trial, and the judge he replaced, Robert Lunin, were both the subject of unique Google searches from both Washington and Israeli IP addresses before the assassination, as well as the construction company that actually basically covered up the entire crime scene after the fact. Did you guys see how quickly the crime scene was
I thought
essentially?
that was strange.
It was strange.
Wouldn't you want to keep
They didn't
things
just
as they
cover
are?
it up.
They completely remodeled it.
Exactly.
It's impossible to go back and retrieve
they poured
any
cement
evidence.
into the area.
Exactly.
It was a complete comprehensive.
Guys, what is going
makeup.
So not only that, but that construction company was also subject to unique searches both before.
Where's the furry lover?
Right. Oh, that's the other thing.
Where's the furry lover?
Lance Twiggs has disappeared. So apparently no one has heard from Lance Twiggs in the period of the last 6 weeks or so. Lance Twiggs has not been back to the premises that Lance shared with Tyler Robinson, their supposed $1,800 a month love nest. Hasn't been back there. Lance's car is currently parked outside of his parents' house, a state over, but nobody has been able to actually.
And is that a top priority of the FBI to try to find him?
Right, apparently
Apparently
not. No, I mean, nobody even knew that this individual was missing. I mean, the whole story was centered around these furries and these people having prior knowledge of the Charlie Kirk assassination. And yeah, there were some weird things. Some people from that Discord server, some people from that community seemed to know that it was going to take place with some of the stuff that they were writing.
Exactly, Amy. You would think that given everything that happened with the Epstein files, how they bungled the release, how they said that everything was on Pam Bondi's desk, and the next minute, nothing was on her desk, she had nothing to release. Maybe they would take a page from the book and understand that the American people have lost all trust in the FBI, in the CIA, and be more upfront and not try to conceal attempts to get at the truth. Because I can bet you the more they try to hide the truth, the more people are going to dig. And we are the media now. We are the media. We are the new media, and we are not going to take talking points or marching orders from mainstream media anymore.
Or Mark Levin.
Or Mark Levin.
All right, let's watch this and then let's discuss.
You guys have heard. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action.
That's the medical examiner. It is a woman named Dr. Deidre Weiss Amaro, and she blew in from California. She was announced as the new state medical examiner in May of 2024. So I'm interested in learning as much as I can about this medical examiner. I'd like to know more about this medical examiner.
You know who else wanted to know more about Dr. Deidre Amaro? It's our friends over there in the state of Israel. But check out this date, June 30th, 2025, a sudden spike in the interests of the head medical examiner of the state of Utah, Dr. Deidre Amaro, emanating from, once again, the state of Israel, for reasons unknown. What about Timpanogos Regional Hospital, the hospital where Charlie Kirk was declared dead? Well, there's pretty much no interest in Timpanogos Regional Hospital in the state of Israel, because why would there be? Except this spike that happened about a month before Charlie Kirk's death. That is very odd. And it was a surgeon from this hospital that told us that Charlie Kirk was a quote-unquote man of steel, and that his body stopped a bullet that would typically just go through everything, and it was an absolute miracle.
All right.
We don't know yet which surgeon supposedly...
He goes through more examples. For the sake of time, I mean, what do you ladies think about this?
That's insane. Someone was on Piers Morgan a couple weeks ago and said that claim by that doctor is just not physically possible. a bullet of that magnitude going at that speed, it would have tore through. He's lucky it didn't kill the person behind him.
Right.
So for him to say, oh, this is because Charlie Kirk internally had some sort of physical characteristic, that's not possible.
So I don't know what to make of this other than I don't trust that the FBI is handling this or investigating this properly. I want to know if the local authorities or the state authorities are investigating this separately. I think they should. I don't know what to make of it because none of this is adding up.
I think going back to the Joe Kent, Kash Patel piece of this, I would like to know who leaked that to the press. You know, that's very clear that that was an intentional leak. I don't know if that came from the FBI, if it came from ODNI. I do know a little bit about Joe Kent. For the audience, you know, Joe Kent is a widow himself. He lost his wife to a suicide bombing when she was serving in the military in the Middle East in one of those fabulous, endless, pointless wars that our politicians love. And he's also a former, when he got out of the military, he became a contractor for the CIA. So if Joe Kent is looking into and wanting to fact check some of the work that's going on in the FBI, I'm going to take that as good faith on Joe Kent's part. And to your point about credibility, they have absolutely bungled the release of the Epstein files. I mean, it's to the point where on the president's TikTok and the White House's TikTok, the #1 comment is, where's the Epstein files? Because to your point, you had Pam Bondi on TV going, oh, they're on my desk. They're on my desk. I'm going to release them right now. Really? And no, it's complete. And I feel bad for Kash Patel because I almost feel like he fell on the sword for that because FBI is subservient to DOJ. I feel like he had to go to that congressional hearing afterwards and get grilled, and I thought Pam Bondi should be in that seat having to answer those questions. But there's serious credibility issues at an institution that already had credibility issues leading into it. That's why Kash Patel was appointed into that job. Right. But they have to correct their credibility on these issues. By the way, we still don't know what happened at the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. We still have no
And by the way, it was a similar thing with
None.
the keywords. I remember there were
get us
posts
answers.
circulating at the time that there were actually prior searches correlated to the assassination same way here. So it's like there's so much more than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
You know?
And instead of getting to the bottom of it and offering the American people the truth, right now we see internecine warfare at the Department of Justice because Pam Bondi has latched onto this situation to make Kash Patel look bad.
Yeah, and it's like, we
I don't know if you guys
but
saw, but yesterday...
Let's get it out there. Let's ask.
Yesterday, it was disclosed that Kash Patel used a government jet to go see his girlfriend in Pennsylvania sing a song.
I saw that.
And I don't think that leak was coincidentally timed.
I don't either.
Exactly.
No,
I think it was very purposely planted. Kash Patel may not have had Pam Bondi's back as much as she would have liked to during the Epstein saga. And right now, I think the chickens
She's
are coming
returning
home.
the favor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
I just want to say in closing, I don't think there's anything wrong with people asking questions.
I agree.
And one thing I'm
100%.
so sick of is people saying, oh, are you anti-Trump? You're not a real conservative. You're not MAGA. Soon they're going to be holding up signs for all of us if we keep espousing the same rhetoric.
Someone's
But
gonna attack
guys,
us today.
guess what? I didn't trust the government when, you know, the Democrats were in power. We still shouldn't fully trust them now until they prove. And I feel like that should be the baseline that we operate under is don't fully trust the government, okay? Obviously, you elect the person most in alignment with your values, who you trust the most, but, you know...
But then you have to wait and see if they actually
follow through,
keep their promises, and I think...
They're not.
The
This
Epstein
administration
files
should be
was
doing more to restore people's faith.
And one last thing, there are bound to be people out there who are going to attack us for the things that we have discussed today, and I want to address them directly. We care about this country. We love this country more deeply than the neoconservatives and the people sending billions of dollars overseas and the people bombing women and children. We love America. And because we love America, we ask questions and we try to better this and make it a more perfect union.
Yeah, and there should be justice for Charlie Kirk and his family, period.
Yes.
We should know the truth about what actually happened that day. Caroline Sunshine, you have been fantastic. Thank you for joining us today. Please tell our audience where they can find you and the work you do.
Okay, to your audience and to Mark Levin, you can find me. Mark Levin, you know where to find me. You can find me on X at CSunshine. You can find me on Instagram at Caroline Sunshine and on TikTok at Caroline M. Sunshine. And I hope I'll see all of you there too.
Love it.
Awesome.
Lindy?
I'm Lindy Li on everything. I'm also Manect. Call me.
Love it. Amy?
You guys can catch my show, Dangerous Conversations, on YouTube. I'm Amy Dangerfield on every platform, or you could call or FaceTime me on the net.
All right, and I'm Anna Kasparian. You guys can find me just by Googling my name. I'm on X, I'm on social media, Instagram, and on Minnect, so send me a question. I'll love to answer it. Thank you for watching Her Take. We love you guys. Have an awesome night.